Alrighty, everybody, welcome to La Suprema Lunch. My name is Alex Biddle, and I'm the community manager at La Suprema Works and Events. For those that don't know, we are a co-working space located in Tucson, Arizona, and we opened almost a year ago. We're lacking like 2 days. We opened May 1st of 2020. So we're very excited to celebrate a year of doing these La Suprema lunches. We launched this virtual lunch and learn series because of COVID. It was a great way to stay connected with the community and provide some incredible opportunities for our members and for folks all around who know of La Suprema. And and today's no exception. Alrighty, let me get on to the next slide here. Okay, so for those in Tucson, just wanted to let you know that we just have one private suite left, and we do have a waiting list for other smaller private suites. So let me know if you're interested in that. And then right now, in the meantime, we have resident desks. So a resident desk membership includes 24/7 access and your very own permanent workstation. And so the benefit with that, if you're looking for a private office, but you just really need a permanent workstation right now, you can start there and be on the wait list. And then our members get first priority on offices that open up. So that's a nice way to kind of transition if you are looking for a private suite. Or maybe you're just looking for a resident desk, an area like that. And we have huddle rooms to make private calls in as well. So if that's something you're interested in, you can always get in touch with me at alex@lasupremaworks.com. And then as the event season is kind of kicking off now that a lot of folks are becoming vaccinated and COVID cases are going down here, we're opening our courtyard up to private events. So if you or anyone you know is planning a graduation party, a bridal shower, some kind of special event, just let me know and I'd be more than happy to help you plan your next gathering. Okay, my spiels are over, and now I'm super excited to welcome Hanna Miller from Master Your Circus. Today's topic is going to be strengths and solo work, understand your talents, and work with ease. So we're just so excited to have Hanna. I wanted to give a little background on her. So Hanna grew up in the circus, very literally, in a show called Arabian Nights. And Hanna and I met maybe a month ago now, and we discovered that I went to the Arabian Nights show in Orlando, Florida, back in, I think, 2006. And Hanna, it was like the prime of the show, Hanna said. So we've probably already been in the same place at the same time before, which is very cool. I'm all about it. Cool. So after the circus, Hanna spent after 20 years of performing and managing and directing and juggling all the hats in the circus, she decided it was time to run away and join the real world. So today, Hanna is a leadership coach and consultant, combining her unique background as a ringmaster with bone-deep passion for leadership. She supports leaders and teams at all stages of their development, helping them to step confidently into the spotlight and unleash their superstar potential. So again, she's the founder of Master Your Circus, and you can find her on masteryourcircus.com. But we'll share all those links after this as well, so that you can easily get in touch with Hanna. So I'm just so pumped to have her today. She really is excellent at what she does and is just a tremendous person. Very excited to share her talents with all of you today. And just for logistics for today, Hanna's going to be presenting, but if you have questions throughout that are, it's really relevant to whatever's going on, please pop them in the chat and I will navigate those and ask Hanna throughout the presentation. And we'll also probably have a few minutes at the end for more questions that come up towards the end. So please bring those in. We love questions. It's the best way to engage with a presentation like this. So, all right, without further ado, Hanna, please take it away. We're super excited to have you here.
Yeah. Oh, there. Share the screen. All right. Hopefully this works correctly. We tested it, but you never know. Everybody can see it okay? Alex, you're
Yeah.
the only one I can see.
It
Yes.
looks
Okay.
it looks excellent. Yeah.
Yay. Okay. I had it set up before where I could see the chat and the questions and stuff, but now that's all gone because I can see my slides. So I'm going to ask y'all some questions too during the presentation. So please jump in because I want to make sure that I'm presenting stuff that's really relevant to you. So I'm excited to be here today. So I saw a couple friends in the audience. Thank you for being here, and folks I've worked with on strengths. So some of you know that I'm a big old strength. I took the Strengths Finder assessment probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and it was just kind of life altering, not because it told me anything I shouldn't have known about myself, but because it gave me a ton of confidence in the reality of like who Hanna is, and really helped me get to this point in my life where I am working on my own most of the time when I'm not working with teams. So my first question for y'all is here's our objectives for today. First, to just kind of give you an overview of the strengths-based theory as it applies to solo work. Second, to talk about how Clifton Strengths differs from MBTI and Enneagram, because it's commonly, everybody's like, oh, those are all the same bucket. And there's a little bit of difference. And then third is to talk a little bit about my personal experience as a solopreneur, as a coach and creative, and how Clifton Strengths can help folks like us elevate our game. So I'm curious, as my first question is like, which of these is most interesting to you?
Number 1, number 3. Everyone else? 1 and 3.
Yeah. 1 and 3. I got a little 2 in there. I got a 2 in the Q&A I can see. Oh, here, maybe I can.
Another 1.
Aha, I found the chat.
A 2.
Yay.
I'm feeling like we're
all of them. Okay, we will
all
cover
of it. So good job, Hanna.
Yay. So my next question is how folks here are working remotely versus alone, like as a solopreneur, or really pretty much where your job is by yourself. Remote, alone-ish, both, remote.
Yeah. So it looks like it's a combo
okay,
from some
nice
people.
Balance.
It's like half remote, half online, and some a combo.
Cool, great. Good to know. I thought it would probably be worth knowing if it was like mostly one in the audience.
Yes.
So my final big question before we start is, what are your biggest challenges with working on your own?
I can start.
Yeah, I do.
I am a very collaborative person. So sometimes when I'm doing something and it's like for the co-working space, I'm like, I want to run this idea off of so many people because I'm excited about it and I want that feedback and that teamwork. And so sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge for me when like my managers or our intern like isn't, when Kat or Gina and Katina aren't around. I'm like, oh, friends. So that's my thing, because my strengths are like all relationship building personally.
Yep. Excellent.
And some things from other folks, they're saying motivation and discipline, making my own work a priority over others, consistent motivation without the accountability, feeling isolated from coworkers, and difficulty communicating accurately with coworkers. Another one, not feeling like my ideas are good enough.
These are all great, and what's about them is they're all different.
Yeah.
And that's totally something that strengths approach addresses, because we'll go on to the next slide. The strengths-based approach is that the idea is that the most direct path to success begins with an investment in talent. Instead of correcting weaknesses, we find what's naturally good with us and build on that. And looking at these problems through a strength lens can help you understand where your specific struggle originates. Like, for example, for me, I spent a whole lot of years feeling like if I could just be organized like other people that I saw, my life would be better and easier. But then when I learned my strengths and I saw that it literally in the bottom 5, I have discipline, consistency, and focus. I was like, oh, I'm never going to be nice like other people. I can let go of trying to do that and feeling bad about myself. And it freed me up to discover play with how I was going to find organized for myself in a way authentic and natural. So differences between strengths and MBTI and Enneagram. All assessments have value. You know, every assessment is providing you with a vocabulary that describes characteristics of an individual. And the more fluency you have with any given vocabulary, the more valuable it becomes. So if you've taken strengths and you read it one time and stuck it in a drawer, it was probably an affirming experience. You're like, yeah, I was like reading a really good horoscope, and then you forget about it. And the same is true with Enneagram or MBTI, whereas the more you work with it, if you work with other people, but if you really invest in it yourself and understanding what your strengths mean or what your type means, you can get deeper and deeper into the meat of what an assessment provides. And the goal of any assessment is just to provide an opportunity to deepen understanding and insight of yourself or other people, and helps us understand and articulate how we think, feel, and behave in ways that our natural talents are so natural to us that we don't notice them. We think everybody works that way, like whether that's that you keep your clothes organized by color, or whether you're somebody who talks to people in elevators, or if you're somebody who cries at movies. Like those are all examples of innate talents, and you think of them as just part of who you are. And you forget that there's an opportunity to build on those and use those to accomplish more and reach your highest success. So the main difference between strengths and MBTI and Enneagram is that MBTI and Enneagram are personality assessments. Inherently, they're measuring something different than strengths is. Strengths is a talent assessment, and it was created specifically to help you work better, to be productively applied. Whereas MBTI and Enneagram, they kind of predate positive psychology movement, and they're focused on different things. So specifically to talk about MBTI, so last thing, MBTI and Enneagram are focused on helping you identify why you do what you do, and strengths is measuring what you're best at. So specifically about MBTI, I've heard other coaches describe MBTI is like your zip code and strengths is your street address. There are 16 types in MBTI, so the descriptions are pretty broad, but by contrast, there are just for your top 5 strengths, and there are 34 in the full report that are ranked. So the numbers get insane when you think about it. But just in your top 5, there are 278,000 plus combinations of your top 5 strengths. So it's really dialed in to who you are specifically, what your specific talents are, and it's much more focused and specific. As I said, it was based on positive psychology, and it's trying to help you identify how to build on what's innate in us and become more effective. And then the Enneagram results focus really on behaviors and motivation, specifically on potential areas of conflict. That can be really helpful in the right circumstance, but in contrast, Enneagram is really focused on weaknesses and how to avoid them, whereas strengths is focusing on how to overcome them using our talent and understanding our potential. Are there any questions on this topic before we move on?
So far, I'm not seeing any, Hannah.
Cool. I know it takes a minute to be like, oh, right, I'm supposed to type now.
Yeah, it takes a second to be like. Cool. I always wondered, Leslie said, I always wondered what the differences are.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we've covered it in a broad one. And I really like MBTI and Enneagram. I get kind of not quite dyslexia, but I get numbers switched up. So it's hard for me to remember like what a 2 means versus what a 4 means in Enneagram. So that's like a personal challenge, although I've enjoyed reading the descriptions and stuff. And who doesn't love looking at MBTI and what characters are the same type as you? The one I most recently found as I was researching this presentation is I have the same personality type as Wash from Firefly, which I think is accurate. Like I'm like both really, really good at being in the moment and also kind of silly and likes to crack jokes and break tension. So, but I'm going to get onto my strengths a little bit. I want to share with y'all. This is my strengths grid. So what you're seeing here is there's 34, as I said, and they're broken into 4 domains of talent. And this is kind of the order in which a project is completed. So strategic thinking, that's the first stage of any project. You're having ideas, you're planning, you're seeing down the road, you're figuring out what the steps are. The second is influencing, which is bringing in people to invest in the project, getting them excited about it. Relationship building is about taking those engagements and building deep connection to accomplish the work. And then executing is the closing strengths, who really make sure that they can catch an idea and really make sure that it gets delivered. And what you're seeing here is the colored numbers are my dominant themes. And I have 12 that I consider my dominant themes. The Clifton Strengths Report will give you 10, but a lot of what I do in an initial strengths insight session with folks is understand what each of these words really means, because they can mean something different in strengths language than they do in English. And then understanding where your dominant themes are. I've had people say there are 6 of them, and that's it. The way I think of dominant themes, the metaphor I'm using lately is of a decorative pond. And this is the pond of your strengths. And the boulders that break the surface of the water that you can see from a distance are your dominant themes. They're obvious, they're tangible, you can reach out and touch them, you could hop around on them. In any given situation, they're what you're going to reach first because they are the most obvious. Then you have supporting themes, which are like the rocks under the surface of the water. And a couple of them are pretty big and they're right below the surface and they're really obvious if you're standing next to the pond. So you're going to lean on them sometimes. But then as you go down the list, you've got smaller and smaller rocks. And you could reach in and grab a hold of them, but it's more effort than it is to use the strengths that you have at the top. And then at the very bottom, you have your lesser themes, and that's the ones in gray you see for me. And those are like the sand underneath all the rocks. Like the amount of effort it's going to take you to comb through the rocks and reach the sand is first of all not worth it. And then second, it's just going to slide right through your fingers and then not be something you can hold. So there's just really no percentage in the strengths-based theory to investing in bringing your weaknesses up or being better at them. So there's 2 really notable things on my report compared to a lot of the reports that I use. One is that I have a lot of influencing themes. These are the least common. A lot of folks I coach don't have 1 in their top 10 or only have 1 or 2, and I have 5, which means I can be kind of a lot in the wrong situation. I like to think that, the stuff at the bottom of your report are not your weaknesses. They're just the areas you don't have any talent. Your weaknesses are your strengths unproductively applied, wrong place, wrong time, wrong person. And so the basements of my strengths say that I'm a know-it-all, show-off, blabbermouth. And when I first got my report and I saw that, I couldn't help but laugh, because I had literally spent my entire life trying to make sure no one ever accused me of being a know-it-all, show-off, blabbermouth. That was my greatest fear. And I realized in this moment of seeing that these were my strengths, I'm like, oh, if people don't like me or I'm in the wrong place, that's what they're going to accuse me of. And if I'm afraid of that, I won't be standing in my strengths. I won't be doing what I'm most capable of. So how about I find work and make sure that I put myself in a situation where that's a valuable talent. So like being here, talking to y'all about strengths, something that I'm impressed, that I love and know a lot about, is a really productive use of some of those strengths. So the other major thing that you can see about me in looking at my grid is over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but my executing themes are abysmal. Like I have so many of them that I just don't have. It's hilarious. I have 1 executing talent. It's a ranger. And honestly, a ranger is really good at delegating, which is not super helpful for a solopreneur. I just had a call with somebody earlier. They're like, do you have anybody you can delegate that to? I'm like, nope. I loved managing in the circus, and something that I love working with managers now is that I get to vicariously manage and help them. But what I've learned about myself from looking at my strengths is, so influencing is really major for me, and relationship building is pretty high up there as well. And it explained something I've always known about myself, which is that credibility is just my cornerstone. Like credibility is the thing that motivates me to do things. So just because I don't have executing themes doesn't mean I don't execute. A lot of folks are surprised if they know strengths to see this, that I don't have high achiever, I don't have high responsibility, because I do show up. I do what I say I'm going to do. I deliver. I don't forget things all the time. I do sometimes. And I forgive myself about it. And I just try and like charm my way out of it because those are my talents. But I really, things that I've learned about myself through this is that to do my best, I require freedom and independence, like complete autonomy. I am inherently resistant to being told what to do. And if I don't understand the reason or value of a task, I can get downright oppositional. So I'm not well cut out to work in a strong hierarchy. Because of my high individualization and positivity and activator, I love to uncover the superstar potential of people. I find most people really intriguing, and I love to celebrate what makes them unique and amazing and figure out how they can, how they find that spark that makes them feel like they want to step into a spotlight and they're covered in sequins. As I was saying about credibility, I am most motivated by commitments to other people. And so things that I've put in place for myself, I have a coach. We meet twice a month, and whether I'm ready or not, and he expects monthly reporting on my business that never in a million years would I do if he didn't expect it. Because even though I know it's valuable, I just wouldn't do it. And it's so valuable. I'm actually looking forward to doing my next month's report because I've had a really good month and I'm making a lot of connections, and I can't wait to see how that compares. I also figured out that I use a CRM, a customer relationship manager, that is a project and task manager. So it ties all of my tasks and projects and opportunities to the people that matter to me, and it tracks all my emails in there. And I'm motivated to do the data entry that is not in my strength zone because it's attached to people, and I know that that's valuable to my relationships down the road. My arranger means I'm great at organizing, but I'm terrible at staying organized. So the result of that, I don't beat myself up for my desk being messy. I love that we meet over Zoom because y'all can't see right here. You can see my beautiful background that I have arranged for you. And, you know, right now there's room for my keyboard on my desk. That is not always the case. And like once a quarter, when I start to feel antsy, I give myself permission to rearrange all the furniture. Not just the stuff on my desk, but like, okay, time to like move my desk, or what do I want to do differently? Got to move the plants around, just because like my arranger likes to do that. And then the final thing is that I realized that my biggest value is having my brain in the room with other people. This 1-2 combination that I have of ideation and strategic means that I am everybody's best brainstorming partner. Like if you need to have ideas, I am good for it. I'm usually good for 3 good ideas in 5 minutes. Somebody's going to test me on that, I'm sure of it. But it's usually pretty true. There's a couple of people in here who will attest to that. But in any scenario, I immediately start generating ideas, and I see the path from where we are to a more positive place in the future and all of the steps it's going to take to get there. And the better I know the people, the more valuable I become. But when I'm facilitating or talking to somebody that I've just met, I've really learned to trust myself. My self-assurance and command are really powerful intuition strengths. And even when that means I've got to completely depart from my plan and follow whatever road comes in front of me, that helps me accomplish something important. So I know these are all very specific examples for me, but I wanted to kind of show you what my journey in strengths has been in terms of learning what I value about myself and what value I can bring to other people and how that's kind of worked. But for the rest of the presentation, I really would love to hear from y'all. If anybody wants to come on camera and talk, I'm sure Alex can promote somebody to a panelist if there's somebody who's got some specific issues, whether you've taken strengths. If you have taken strengths and you want to share them, I'm happy to kind of do like mini laser coaching. I haven't done a lot of that in public, but if you're game, I'm game. But I'm in. Alex, I know you know your strengths, so we could always use you as a guinea pig. But I want to see first, does anybody have any questions or any troubleshooting that they'd love to talk about?
Yeah.
Process.
Yeah, what the process is, and is it online? What's the cost? Like, how do we access it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's on a website. It's gallup.com, I think, or you can just Google Strengths Finder and it's going to come right up. And you can get the top 5 strengths for about $25, I think. But they've made unlocking the full report. I think it's like 50 plus tax, might be 55. And it's the assessment once you've gone through the registration process, it takes you like 20 to 30 minutes of completely uninterrupted focus time. Like the questions are timed and they're really weird. And it can be a little unsettling, but if you get interrupted in the middle of it, it will pause. But if you've got, I've had people like trying to answer the phone while they're doing it. I'm like, no, turn off your email, invest the time in this, because you'll feel better about your results if you gave it. Anna wants to be live coach. Of course you do. And your strengths too. If you can look up your strengths really quick and drop them in the chat, that'll be helpful.
So Anna's question is how to balance a personality that needs autonomy with being an employee.
Absolutely.
Great. And then Anna, if you have strength, like if you know your strengths and you want to jot them here, that would certainly be helpful. There we go.
Perfect.
Can you see those, Hanna?
I can.
Perfect.
Awesome. So can we bring Anna up?
Yes, I need to do my partner. That's right. Okay, Anna, I think you should be able to
there you go.
Your video.
And if you're unprepared for video, I can just coach your picture because we've met.
I can't turn on my video. It says the host has stopped it. So I'm happy to be on camera though.
I want to make you on camera. Let's just
okay.
I'll make you a co-host, I suppose. Here we go. You should be able to put yourself on video now, Anna.
All right, here I am.
Yay! In your bright coral sweater that I've met you in.
I put it on very quickly right now because I was not wearing this a second ago. I was like, I want to get coached.
So talk to me a little bit about what challenges, you need autonomy in being an employee. Where does that specifically grate on you?
So I will say, probably like around like strategic and focus a little bit more. Like I resonated with what you said, or like if I don't understand why we're doing something, like it's really hard for me to get on board with it. So and then focus, I would say specifically, like I do better when I'm like, okay, here's the things that I'm like have domain over, I'm on top of it, this is my jam, this is my whatever. And being an employee, like a lot of times it's like you have your good on paper plan and they're like, no, this is what you're doing instead. And you're like, oh, and then the part of me that's like significance, it's like, I like an Anna show. Like nobody's trying to have
recognition. You want recognition for your work. Yeah.
So that's a 2-part question. But I would say the one thing is just like when you have this personality type that does better with being able to laser focus on things, and that's not always the case when you don't choose what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks that I've coached with focus tend to really need to be able to declare that they require time alone to work that's uninterrupted. And so to say, okay, I've got high focus, these hours of each week, I'm going to turn off my email and my texts, and I'm going dark for an hour or 2 hours at a time. And so that you've got that time and you can plan the work you want to do in that. But being interrupted for folks with high focus is like not okay. Like a monster comes out. And so it's good to warn people, like if you knock on my door or you text me a million times when I'm in focus time, I apologize in advance for my reaction, because it's just, you're doing something that hurts, it's painful, because folks with high focus can really sink into flow really easily in that way. And interrupting it is really unfortunate. And, I think that being able to name your strengths and talk about what they need, something I heard too was context. Like, you need to understand the context of a decision, especially probably if it's a change in direction. So, that order, counter order, disorder idea is probably a bigger hurdle for you than somebody with like high adaptability and, like that's more comfortable. And so just being able to name and say, these are my needs, I'm going to need to understand why we're doing what we're doing. And once we make a plan, I would really, really appreciate it if we didn't change it unless it was strictly necessary, or if we could have check-in points where we're like, okay, we're going to check in every 2 weeks. And at that point we can make changes. But like, if the random changes getting thrown at me, they're disruptive and they make, I can hear you're like, exactly, those things. Please don't do those things.
Was that sigh audible?
Yes.
Oh, this is being recorded. Okay.
So yeah, one of the huge values of strengths is being able to talk about your needs to the people that you work for or with, whether that's remotely or in person, and be able to say, look, this is stuff that knocks me off my game. I'm not going to be able to bring you my best if I don't have my needs aren't met. I can't control without my needs being.
Okay. If I can ask like a quick, I've
do.
not seen anybody else saying they want to get questions. I'm going to say one more thing. So like with significance, where like I called it the Anna show.
Yeah.
So like going back to like the employee kind of thing, like a lot of times as an employee, like you do a lot of work so that your supervisors look good, right? The department looks good, or this and this and that. Like, do you have examples of people successfully navigating wanting that like recognition when you're kind of doing work that elevates other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of hack your brain a little bit and recognize that any recognition that they get belongs to you too, and like have some celebration. It would be better if they would, include you and kind of put their arm around you on that and be like, oh, I couldn't be here without you, and look at what your contribution is. But there's also, I mean, you've got high context too. So that makes me think that there's maybe a larger need from significance that is to make a mark that will be remembered, because context loves history and recorded history and personal history, but to, maybe recognize the significance of what you're doing right now on your future growth, and to take moments to look backward and say, hey, what was the impact there? What is the lasting value from an experience before? And what am I doing right now that I might feel that way about in the future?
That resonates.
Cool.
Yeah. No, because the last thing I'll say, I don't know if you have to call, but yeah, I recently, I was updating my resume, and I reached out to some folks I worked with like 5-6 years ago to get some actual like impact tracking on some of the what's happened since. And I was definitely like, oh my gosh, like look at me. Look what I did.
So totally. So when your significance is feeling like unwatered, right? Like treat it like a plant. Be like, oh, I need to water you. Let me go talk to somebody I worked with before and ask them how I impacted them, because that'll like, it's a very specific kind of plant that you're going to have to, especially when you work for someone where you're not getting that recognition from your position, that you can find other ways in your life to feed that.
Totally. I love the historical context. That's an aha moment for me. Cause like in the moment, if somebody says, thank you, that's great, I'll be like, okay. I'm like, I want to know in 5 years that I've changed your life.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to know right now.
Fantastic. Very cool. I'm so glad to get an aha moment.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Anna.
I appreciate. Thanks for your bravery.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question for you, Hanna. What do you say to people that do see the bottom portion of their strengths? Like, you see it, and if you're someone like me, you fixate on that. It's like, okay, I see that I am horrible with, I like wrote them down. I'm like, this is me. Why am I like focusing on my weaknesses? I'm like restorative, consistency, deliberative, context, harmony. I'm like, why, what do I need to do to be better at these? Or like, what do I do about this essentially?
Yeah. So you're looking at the bottom and you're feeling bad about it.
Well, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, gosh.
Very normal reaction. Do you have achiever kind of high?
I do have, yeah, achiever.
Yeah.
Well, achiever's number 9 for
Yeah.
me.
So yeah, totally a dominant theme. So yeah, I find folks who have achiever really high tend to get a little like twitchy about the bottom of the report. They're like, no, I could be good at that too. I'm gonna be good at everything.
Yeah.
And really it's about recognizing that that's just not your path to greatness. Like if you imagine a bunch of paths, that one is like uncleared over rocks and boulders and through thorns. So you could try and care more about history and or which is context, or with restorative, you could try and notice problems more. But those are kind of almost in opposition to the strengths that are at the top, because I know you got high positivity.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, you know, if I do meet people sometimes who have kind of contrasting strengths where like I liken them to like they're driving a stick shift, because they got to decide, am I in positivity right now or am I in restorative? Because those two things do different jobs. So it's just about saying like, you could try and go that way, but it's rougher and harder and you're not going to get as far as fast. And whereas you could go along the roads that are your roads alone and really do more of that. And so it's a positive thing. Also, there are 34, something has to be at the bottom. So if you've invested a whole lot of time down here, there's a multiplier idea that Strengths uses, and they always use it with the movie Rudy, and that doesn't, most people haven't seen that, I think. So if anybody's got a different metaphor, but the idea is that we have this American ideal where we love the underdog, right? Like we love somebody who puts in a ton of effort where they've got very little talent and then they reach some kind of success, right? Like if you saw the movie Rudy, this guy who can't play football works really hard, scores a goal that doesn't matter, and everybody puts him on their shoulders. Rudy. And like, that's the opposite. So Rudy's got like a 1 in talent in football, and he's got a 5 in effort. And we love that 5 in effort, but like you multiply those together and he's a 5. That's the same as someone with a 5 in talent putting a 1 in effort into their talent. They're still a 5, but if you put your 5 in effort into your 5 in talent, you can be a 25. Like, so put your energy and effort into the stuff at the top, and it's just gonna feed you more. You're gonna flourish.
Yeah, that was a beautiful explanation. Wonderful, super helpful. Okay, so we have some more questions actually. How much do your strengths change through your life? Can you learn a strength along the way that you realize you'd never really tapped into, or kind of lose your edge with another one?
So Gallup is pretty adamant that your strengths don't change. Like the talents are innate. They're like aptitudes. They're things you're born with. And there are, strengths parenting books for strength spotting in kids and stuff like that. So they really highly discourage you from taking the assessment more than once. Although I have known people who've taken it at different points in their life, and more specifically in different roles. Like I went through coaching with somebody who had taken it at least 3 times, once for her church, once for her work, and then once to be a Gallup coach. And some of it really remained the same and some moved a lot, and it was over years and stuff. So they can change. I think major life events are probably more likely to make them change, like, things that change you to your core. The biggest problem is that because it's a really scientifically validated tool, the more you know the language of strengths, the less valid the assessment becomes. Like I could not take the assessment and get valid results because I now know what they're asking. And that's one of the things when you take the assessment that makes it really weird is you're like, what do you mean? These two things are not different. And it's because they're trying to rank themes that show up kind of similarly. And, like harmony and empathy, there's places they overlap. There's ways that they're different too. And so understanding that ranking is important. So There's also what I call the jelly belly effect. So imagine there's a tropical fruit jelly belly, and like, say I have it and you don't, and like we'll call it my ideation. I don't. Do you have ideation in your top 10, Alex?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. I am someone who's taken it 3 times.
Ah.
I'm really writing down my things right now. And I was reflecting back to the very first time I took it before I knew about before I knew about what the strengths actually were. And my number 1 at that point was ideation.
Okay.
I've not had it in my top ever since.
In your top 5?
In my top 5. I don't believe, maybe my second time, but now I just took it a few months ago or 6 months ago, and it's not in there now. But yeah, ideation was number 1 for me. So
okay. And it's not in your top 10 right now? So you'll have to look. So you've got the 3 buckets, that those dominant themes. It doesn't really matter what's number 1 and number 2. Sometimes your 1 or 2 is like the lens through which you see the world. But the CEO of Gallup has analytical at number 7, and it is completely his driver. And I've heard him speak about this, and that's why they've opened up the full report and made it. It used to be like $100 and nobody was doing it. That's why they cut the price down so that it's more accessible, because you really have to look at the whole picture of your dominant themes. And the top 5 is only really useful in really large groups where there's no possibility of understanding that much information that quickly, and it's a starting point, and then you want to go deeper later. But so the jelly belly effect of like, you have high ideation, so that's a bad one. But say it's strategic, like you're like, what do you mean I don't have strategic? I'm a totally strategic person. Like, well, if you've got futuristic and you've got analytical, like there's other strengths that, like, mine is a tropical fruit jelly belly and you've got a banana and a pineapple and like a mango. Like, you don't have a papaya or kiwi, but like, yeah, does it matter really? Like, isn't a banana and a pineapple and a mango close enough? And so how do those, how do you combine the strengths to accomplish things? And strengths is about how you do what you do, not defining what you do. And there are some strengths where, like, you're unlikely to love accounting if you don't have, if you have really low analytical and discipline. And, there are some talents that suit certain professions, but they aren't prerequisites. You just are less likely to have that, like, innate love for it. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that you're coming at it from a different way. Does that answer your question, Maggie?
yes.
Yay.
It does.
Good.
Yeah. I think that's a really good perspective. Yeah, I sometimes struggle because I'm like, wow, my top is just sometimes so dominated by relationships, and previously it was more strategic, and then it moved into like almost like kind of a mix, and now I'm top 4 out of my 5 are relationships, and 1 woo, which I feel like is the most relationships of the
influencers. It totally is.
So yeah, so it's been really interesting. I'm like, wait, how am I supposed to get things done? So it's interesting. It's like, oh, maybe like you were talking about earlier, you need a person that you really value and care about to hold you accountable. Right.
Yeah. Or you tie the tasks, like, honestly, like a hack that I've used, and I think of strengths as just a really great way to hack your brain. Hacks that I use is like, I don't like the dentist, and I kind of got oppositional about flossing my teeth as a young person. But I realize as an adult human that, like, I want to keep my teeth and you have to floss them. That's just like a thing that has to be done. But I won't do it because I'm supposed to. So I asked my husband, I'm like, could it be really important to you that I floss my teeth? Like, could you be disappointed in me if I fail to floss my teeth? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, I need you to mean it. He's like, yes, I will be disappointed in you, Hannah, if you do not floss your teeth. I'm like, thank you. And now every day when I go like, I could skip it today, I'm like, nope, Luke wants me to floss my teeth. Here we go. So I totally will use people in my life in that way to totally borrow it, because I know that's the only way I'm going to get it done. And especially once I have dug in my heels and I'm feeling oppositional about it, like, I'm not doing it because the dentist told me, because those people hurt me. I would do it because my partner cares about me. That's a good reason.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Okay, so now let's think about folks who are, maybe they're hiring someone, like they're a small business owner, they're an entrepreneur, solopreneur working alone right now. Um, how should they keep strengths in consideration as they start to add more people to the team? Maybe they're hiring an intern, maybe they're hiring like they're finding a co-founder,
Mhm.
anyone that they're going to be working closely with. What should they keep in mind for that?
Thank you. Great question. So strengths has traditionally not been recommended as a hiring tool.
Hmm.
They're starting to change their mind about that at Gallup, but they haven't done any training for coaches on it. And I've done some hiring where we use strengths, and it's like, you don't need to use the tool to identify where you need the most help. I mean, this is something that my dad, I grew up with my parents owning this rather large small business with 200 employees and 500,000 people a year, 500 shows,
Yeah.
a lot of moving parts for what was technically a small business. And my dad always told me, I would read him resumes in the car when he was hiring. And he always told me, your greatest strengths are equal in size and scope to your greatest weaknesses. So what kind of weaknesses do you want to see in the people you hire? Great big ones. You want to find people who have big weaknesses and know what they are, but you want them to be where you're strong, and you want them to be strong where you're weak. Like, don't hire people who are good at what you're good at. Hire people who are good at what you're bad at. And I think that's really important as entrepreneurs start to grow their businesses, to do some work internally with a coach somehow to identify what's the work you actually want to give up and are willing to, because when you're an entrepreneur, it's hard to give things up. You're used to doing everything yourself. You know that you don't have capacity to do everything all the time, but it's really challenging to let go of things. So what are the things that genuinely drain your battery? That's another way to look at strengths, is when you're operating in the strength zone, you're energized, you're excited, you want to do more work. And when you're operating outside your strength zone, you're tired and frustrated. So for me, I have a bookkeeper. Like, that's something I gave myself super early. Hire a bookkeeper. If you are not numbers inclined, bookkeepers are not necessarily a huge expense. And it's so much energy and effort to reconcile your damn QuickBooks. And if that doesn't make sense to you, like, let someone else do it. It is your time is better spent going out and getting a client who can pay for that. So the idea with strengths is you want to look at the stuff at the bottom of your report, and there's 3 ways to accomplish those. One is redirect your talents, as we've been talking about. Take the strengths you do have and figure out how to apply them to those situations. The second is partner with someone who's strong where you're weak. So that's the kind of thing that, as you're adding, especially if you're adding an owner or something, and having a partnership, but in any growth, I mean, if you're going from 1 to 2, even if that's an assistant or an intern that's doubling your company, you really want to understand what do you need them to bring in. And the Clifton strengths isn't the right way to find that out. Like, think about that and answer those questions and craft your interview around that. And also think about values. Like, shared values are so important on teams of any size, and knowing what yours are so that you can articulate them and ask about them is really super important. And then the third way is hire it done, which is what I do.
Yeah.
But I had somebody ask me today if I have a virtual assistant that I could delegate some stuff to, and I'm like, I'm not ready to let anybody, they wouldn't do it right. Wait a minute. What do I have that they could do right?
Yeah, that's a great perspective shift for sure. Yeah, I'm really thinking about that. It's really good to know though, like, don't go into an interview saying like, what are your Clifton strengths? It's good to see it in that perspective and understand that this is something, maybe this is a tool that should be used when someone is hired and has some time to work within that role. And then maybe this is something that you do with your team.
Right. And it's something that for when you're on your own, it can be a really valuable tool to understand yourself and where your motivation comes from and what's really demotivating for you. And there's a lot of tools that I have as a coach that articulate that for the different strengths. So you know, if you're really deep into this language and it becomes a tool that you've used extensively, then it can be helpful. But when you're dealing with somebody who's just taken it and doesn't really understand how strengths show up for them, like, I don't know if you've all seen the movie Inside Out, but I rewatched it recently. It's such a great movie. If you haven't seen Inside Out, it's like the best movie about adolescence ever. But I've started to think about strengths as the people behind the control system in your brain. Like, so the more you know them, the more you can choose who's in charge in a given situation, or know that, you know, for me, ideation is going to show up all day, every day. Like, I have to say idea, not suggestion. Something you should know about me with my ideas is that I have no attachment to them. You can reject them all. I'll have more, like, they're not important. But people don't always know that if I don't announce that, they're like, okay, I'm going to throw some ideas at you. None of these could be right. Like, it's not that I know the right answer. It's just that I have all these ideas and I have high communication, so they fall out of my mouth. Throw them away if you want. But yeah, once you have somebody, because strengths is about how, not what, it can be a great language to understand what motivation, as Anna was saying earlier, somebody with high significance, it's good to give them a little more extra recognition and make sure they know their impact on what's achieved and let them have some spotlight. You know, there's some strengths that want a little more spotlight. And there's some strengths that really don't. Yeah, it's a lens to value people and which builds engagement. I see there's a comment from Maggie. I just realized that I started a thought parking lot by my desk so I don't distract myself with new ideas and can stay focused, because I did get distracted very easily. Not sure if I would have started doing that if I didn't know ideation with the thing. Excellent. Yeah, a lot of folks with ideation, it's very helpful to have a place to record your ideas, so that, yeah, safe.
Yeah. All the compliments. Yeah. I think it's wonderful to know these things. Ideation with me, it's kind of like ideation plus achiever plus responsibility, is like, I'll have ideas or something that pops into my head. And if I don't write it down, it just sits here. Like, it's on a loop. I'm like, I'm going to forget that thing. It needs to be right here. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, here's a great tool for me. Just write this down. It will be there. You will know where to go to find it. And that's been a huge help. Like, I always have a journal around me, and I've actually started using something called Todoist, which is
Todoist is great.
You can use it online or on your phone. And so for me, that's been really helpful. But it is just like such a great way to understand ourselves and even our stressors and what also just like the environments that we thrive in. Right.
Absolutely. Well, and to go back to what you were saying earlier about being concerned that you have too many relationship building ones, you've got achiever and responsibility. That is like the most get it done powerhouse duo in strengths. Like, once you write it down, it's law and it will always happen. So, like, just put it on your list and it'll get done, because if not, you'll feel terrible.
Yes, that is true.
So
yeah.
I do have some folks who, when their list gets too long, that we've come up with this idea of, set aside time for bottom of the list day. Like, set aside an hour that is only for doing things that you never get to, like non-urgent but important tasks, and like the stuff that you find yourself transferring list after list. Oh, I love that. Kathy saying to Anna, a great way to get compliments is to write yourself your own thank you notes. I suspect that would work really well for you, Anna. Write them and hide them around so that you like find them.
I love that. You were saying something though. I just lost my train of thought. Hannah, what were you saying right before that?
Achiever and responsibility and writing the bottom of the list day.
Bottom of the list day, yes. So with those things that like maybe they just like keep getting put off, is that a good idea to hire someone to do that thing? Or
it's a good.
Here's a whole day. Like, make the most focused time for yourself that you can think of and just get this thing done.
I think it's an option. I think stuff that you don't do is the stuff you probably most need to hire somebody to do. Like, right? Like, stuff you just don't do. I was meeting with somebody earlier today about PR, because it's like the PR is like a thing that I don't know about, and I don't have a ton of interest, but I know it's something I need to get better at. And it's the researching who to build relationships with piece. I'm like, I'm just not going to do it because I don't feel like I will be successful. And for me, I don't play if I can't win. It's kind of one of my weaknesses or strengths. And she's like, you should hire a virtual assistant for this. I'm like, I don't even know how to do that, but that is a really smart idea. We should probably work together so that I can learn how to hire and delegate this, because I know I won't do it. Like when you have a task that you know needs to be done and you know you just are going to do every possible thing to avoid it, that's the kind of thing that is best to partner with or hire it done. Yeah. And recognize, maybe like keep a list of what are those kind of things and what do they have in common? Like what is it that makes that not, like for me, it's because it's research. I don't have any of the talents that love to learn and read and figure things out through wading through information. Like I started a book club. My partner, who has a lot of these talents and is often my research director, he was like, you should look into other book clubs and see what other people are doing. And I'm like, that's a totally reasonable thing that many people would do. I'm going to send a survey to everybody I want to invite and ask them what works and what experience, what do you want out of this? What don't you want out of this? And I'm going to build it around the people, because that's what matters to me. That's what motivates me. And it went pretty well.
That's great. I love that. And you have so many great ideas too. So
they're endless. Hopefully most of them are good.
Endless ideas. I love that. Well, I just want to see, we just have a few minutes left. So I wanted to see if anyone had any last lingering questions before we give a huge thank you to Hanna. And then Hanna, if there's anything that you want to add for the last few minutes, maybe contact info that I can also share that out. But
yeah, I was going to try and put it up if I can find my PowerPoint. It's somewhere.
I think you found it. I'm looking.
You can see it. I can't see it. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, everyone. So feel free to take a screenshot of this. I will also send it out to you in an email with this recording, so that you can refer back to this, because it was filled with so many great information, so much great information. I was going to say nuggets, but it really feels way more significant than that. It's really been super enjoyable and very engaging.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to give a thank you to Anna for being vulnerable and sharing your stories with everybody. Like, huge claps.
Huge thanks.
Snaps for
very
that.
Very brave, very impactful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for attending today. It's been wonderful to have you. Really a wonderful time. And Hanna, million thanks go to you. You are so incredibly talented, and we can all benefit from the work that you do and what you're bringing into the world. So huge thank you.
Super appreciate it. Well, and we've talked about possibly doing a follow-up workshop if folks are interested, where folks would take the strengths assessment and then come and do a workshop to really dive into your strengths. And so if you're interested in that, let us know, so that we can see if that's something we should do.
Yeah, we're putting our feelers out there. So we would love to hear that. And it sounds like folks are interested. So that's wonderful. Yeah. And like Hanna said, we would want everyone to have taken strengths at that point, so we could dive deeper. Yeah. And if you already have, then like Hanna was saying, wonderful, keep that.
If you've taken your top 5, you can always just unlock the rest of your report. Gallup's is an analytics company. They keep all your information forever.
That's what they do. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Hanna. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and maybe go get some Jenny's ice creams at Time Market if you live in